How do you secure your father's throne? If you're Constantius II, the son of Constantine the Great, you start by massacring your entire family. This is the bloody paranoid reign of the emperor who inherited a Christian empire and drenched it in blood. Forget Game of Thrones. In 337 AD, three brothers inherited the Roman Empire. This is the story of the one in the middle, the one who would outfight, outmaneuver, and outlive them all, leaving a trail of dead brothers and dead rivals in his wake. His father, Constantine, legalized Christianity. His son, Constantius II, turned it into a weapon. The story of the religious fanatic who spent his entire 24-year reign in a brutal civil war, fighting other Christians over a single word. He was the son of Constantine the Great, and he murdered his cousins to secure his power. But in a final act of irony, the one cousin he spared would become his greatest rival and try to undo everything his father had ever built. This is the story of Constantius II. Hello friend, I am Czar with the story of forgotten last stand of Roman Empire. We shall educate us about the Emperor Constantius II. You are kindly requested to subscribe, like, share, and share your thoughts about Byzantine Empire. The reason Constantine the Great failed to define a clear, single heir is that he chose a different, more complex, and ultimately disastrous plan. He did not want a single heir. He wanted a collective dynasty, and he fatally misjudged his family's ambition. By giving all three sons and two nephews power, armies, and territory before he died, he didn't create a team. He created five armed rivals. He pitted his sons against their cousins and the brothers against each other. Constantine was a ruthless autocrat. He should have known that his remaining sons, raised in this brutal court, were just as paranoid and ambitious as he was. They had no interest in sharing power with their cousins. Constantine may have intended to manage this complex system, but he ran out of time. In 337 AD, while preparing for a massive war against the Persian Empire, he suddenly fell ill and died near Nicomedia. He was on his way to the frontier, not in a capital city managing his succession. His sudden death left his five designated heirs in a state of chaos. Constantine the Great, a genius of war and politics, failed at succession because he designed a system that relied on family loyalty in a family that had none. And he died before he could manage the chaos he had created. Now, Constantius II faced two profound difficulties related to his family. The first was a horrific family tragedy that he witnessed as a child, and the second was a ruthless, bloody purge he orchestrated as an adult to secure his throne. The first major difficulty was not in getting the throne, but in the brutal family dynamic set by his father, Constantine the Great. Constantius II was the son of Constantine the Great and his second wife, Empress Fausta. He had two full brothers, Constantine II and Constans. When Constantius II was about 9 years old, his father, Constantine, created a black day for the imperial family. First, Constantine ordered the execution of his eldest son and Constantius II's half-brother, Crispus. Crispus was a popular and brilliant military commander, and the reason for his execution is one of history's great mysteries. The most common theory is that Constantius II's mother, Fausta, falsely accused Crispus of trying to seduce her, possibly to eliminate a rival to her own son's inheritance. Soon after Crispus was killed, Constantine was allegedly made to realize his terrible mistake, perhaps by his own mother, Helena. In a rage, he had Fausta executed by locking her in an overheated balneum, bathhouse, where she was suffocated by the steam. This event was a defining trauma. Constantius II grew up in a court where he learned that the ultimate price of a dynastic power struggle was the execution of your closest relatives, a lesson he would later apply with ruthless precision. The greatest difficulty Constantius II faced in securing the throne was that his father, Constantine, had failed to create a clear succession plan. When Constantine the Great died in May 337 AD, he hadn't left the empire to just one son. He had divided power among five family members: his three sons, Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans; his two nephews, Flavius Dalmatius and Hannibalianus. This set the stage for an inevitable and massive civil war between the five cousins. Constantius II, who was 20 years old, faced the immediate difficulty of eliminating his rivals. The solution? The Summer of Blood. Constantius II was in the east when his father died. He immediately rushed to Constantinople to oversee the funeral. Soon after, a spontaneous military mutiny began in the palace. In reality, this was a systematic, brutal purge of the imperial family, almost certainly orchestrated by Constantius II himself. The soldiers claimed they would only serve the sons of Constantine, not his nephews. Over several months, the army methodically slaughtered all of Constantius II's potential rivals, including his uncle, Flavius Dalmatius, Constantine's half-brother, his uncle Julius Constantius, Constantine's half-brother, his cousin Dalmatius Caesar, who was meant to rule with him, his cousin Hannibalianus, who was also meant to rule, numerous other cousins and high-ranking officials. The only male relatives to survive the massacre were his two young cousins, Gallus and Julian, the future emperor, who were either spared due to their youth or because they were not seen as a threat at the time. After this difficulty was solved, Constantius II and his two brothers, Constantine II and Constans, met and formally divided the entire Roman Empire between the three of them, having successfully eliminated all other family claimants to the throne. Constantius II ruled as a deeply paranoid, ruthless, and religiously dogmatic emperor. His 24-year reign was not a period of expansion. It was a desperate and non-stop struggle to defend and hold the empire together against internal usurpers and external enemies. He ruled through a vast network of spies and secret agents, agentes and rebus. Unlike his father, he was a palace-bound emperor, not a field general. He was heavily influenced by the eunuchs in his court, who formed a corrupt, inner circle that many Roman aristocrats despised. His paranoia was extreme. He appointed his cousin Gallus as Caesar, junior emperor, to rule the East, but later grew suspicious of him, had him arrested, and executed in 354 AD. Constantius II was not just a Christian emperor, he was a devout Arian. This was his reign's central feature. He believed in the Arian doctrine, which held that Jesus Christ was a created being, subordinate to God the Father, and not co-eternal with him. He dedicated his reign to forcing this single belief upon the entire empire. He persecuted Athanasius of Alexandria and other Orthodox bishops who believed in the Nicene Creed, the Trinity. He spent incredible amounts of time and state resources forcing bishops to attend councils, signing new creeds, and exiling anyone who disagreed. He essentially turned a theological debate into a state-sponsored civil war, leaving the church more divided than ever. Constantius II did not expand the empire's borders by a single inch. His entire reign was a series of brutal defensive wars to prevent the empire from collapsing. His biggest fights were against other Romans, or we can call civil wars. The empire was initially split between Constantius II and his brothers. This arrangement collapsed into war, leaving him the sole ruler by 353 AD. His most difficult war was a bloody 2-year campaign, 351 to 353 AD, to defeat the usurper Magnentius in the west. This war was catastrophic, killing tens of thousands of elite Roman soldiers on both sides, which fatally weakened the army for decades. His main external enemy was Shapur II of the Sasanian, Persian Empire. Constantius spent most of his life on the eastern frontier, waging a long, grinding, and purely defensive war. His goal was not to conquer Persia, but to stop Persia from taking key Roman fortress cities like Nisibis and Amida. It was a costly stalemate. With the army weakened by civil war, the northern borders were under constant attack from the Alemanni, Franks, and other tribes. Constantius's greatest success here was appointing his last surviving cousin, Julian, later known as Julian the Apostate, as Caesar in Gaul. Julian proved to be a brilliant general and successfully secured the Rhine frontier for a time. For a common person in the Roman Empire, life under Constantius II 337 to 361, was defined by instability, heavy obligations, and a new, often intolerant religious landscape. While his father Constantine had set these changes in motion, Constantius II enforced them with a harsh and uncompromising hand. Life for a common man largely depended on who he was, a farmer, a soldier, or a city dweller. The vast majority of the population were farmers, and most were no longer free landowners. They were tenant farmers known as colony. A common farmer was legally tied to the piece of land he worked. He was not a slave, but he was not free to leave. A law from 332, just before Constantius II's reign, but enforced by him, stated that any colony found on another's estate would be returned in chains. Hereditary obligation was a status hereditary. A farmer's children were born into the same obligation, tied to the same plot of land, ensuring a permanent labor force for the wealthy landowner. The farmer paid his rent and a large share of his crops, and on top of that, he was responsible for paying the state's land tax. This left him with very little, and the wealthy senatorial landowners, who were often exempt from these taxes, grew richer while the farmer's debt grew. The soldier status, with constant civil wars against his brothers and the usurper Magnentius, and endless campaigns against the Persians in the east and Germanic tribes in the west. The army was always hungry for new recruits. The 4th century army was heavily dependent on conscription. A common man was likely to be drafted, or his landlord might be required to provide a certain number of recruits from his estates. Life as a soldier was brutal, with harsh discipline and constant risk of death in bloody, inconclusive wars. The pay was much lower than it had been in earlier centuries, but it offered a few benefits: a guaranteed ration of food, clothing, and a sense of stability in a chaotic world. The city dweller status, life in the cities, was marked by growing inequality and, for the first time, intense and state-sponsored religious conflict. While the super-rich built lavish palaces, the common city dweller lived in a cramped, unsanitary tenement, insula. The state's power was increasingly used to protect the privileges of the wealthy, who were largely immune from the crippling taxes that fell on everyone else. The loss of civic life was another setback. Constantius II stripped cities of their revenues and local property, meaning the public services that defined Roman urban life, baths, games, and temple maintenance, began to crumble, diminishing the quality of life for all. Constantius II's new laws were not about improving the lives of common people, but about enforcing his will, particularly in matters of religion. He was a devout Arian Christian, and his policies reflected a new era of intolerance. For the common man who was still pagan, a large portion of the population, life became dangerous. Constantius II enacted a law that banned all pagan sacrifices, making the practice a capital crime punishable by death. He ordered the closure of pagan temples, shutting down the centers of community, festivals, and religious life for many. The common Jewish man faced crippling new legal and economic restrictions. Jews were forbidden from marrying Christian women, with the crime punishable by death. Jews were forbidden from owning Christian slaves, a common source of labor at the time. Any Jew who converted a Christian to Judaism would have his property confiscated by the state. If you were a common man who happened to be a Christian cleric, you were suddenly elevated. Constantius granted Christian clergy exemptions from taxes in compulsory public services, a valuable and widely resented privilege. Constantius II's family life was defined by a failure to produce a male heir, and his rule ended abruptly while marching to fight a civil war against his last surviving male relative, Julian, who ultimately became his successor. Constantius II had 3 wives but failed to produce the son he desperately needed to secure his dynasty. First wife was a daughter of his uncle, Julius Constantius, name unknown, whom he married around 335 AD. Second wife was Eusebia, married circa 353 AD. She was a very intelligent and influential Arian who had a major impact on court policy. She died childless around 360 AD. His third wife was Faustina, married 361 AD, He married Faustina in the last year of his life. He had only one child named Flavia Maxima Constantia, a daughter. His only child was born after his death, posthumously, to his third wife Faustina. Because she was a woman, she could not inherit the throne in her own right. She later married the future emperor Gratian. The fact that Constantius II had no sons created a severe succession crisis, forcing him to rely on the very cousins he had tried to eliminate. In 337 AD, Constantius II had overseen the massacre of his uncles and cousins to secure the throne for himself and his two brothers. The only male relatives he spared were two young cousins, Gallus and Julian. First chosen heir was Gallus. By 351 AD, Constantius was fighting a civil war in the west and needed a ruler for the east. He appointed his cousin Gallus as Caesar, junior emperor and heir. However, Gallus ruled brutally, and Constantius grew paranoid, had him arrested, and executed in 354 AD. His second chosen heir, Julian. In 355 AD, now desperate, Constantius II appointed his last surviving male relative, Gallus's half-brother Julian, as the new Caesar. He sent Julian to rule Gaul, modern-day France. Constantius II's reign ended not in glory, but in a panicked rush to stop the very heir he had created. Julian's rebellion, 360 AD. Julian proved to be a brilliant and wildly popular general in Gaul. Constantius, jealous and paranoid, demanded that Julian send his best troops to the east to fight the Persians. Julian's army, loyal to him, refused to go. They mutinied and proclaimed Julian as the full Augustus, senior emperor. The inevitable civil war erupted. This was an act of rebellion. Constantius II, who was in the east preparing for his Persian campaign, was forced to turn his entire army around to march west and destroy his last remaining cousin. The civil war never happened. While on the march to confront Julian, Constantius II contracted a violent fever. He died on November 3, 361 AD, in Cilicia, modern-day Turkey. On his deathbed, Constantius II knew the empire would collapse into another bloody civil war if he didn't name a successor. In a final pragmatic act, he officially named his rival, Julian the Apostate, as his sole heir and the legitimate emperor of the Roman Empire. His death ended the dynasty of Constantine the Great. Constantius II is the forgotten son, trapped between the colossal legacy of his father, Constantine, and the scandalous story of his cousin, Julian the Apostate. He ruled for 24 long years, yet his only achievements were defensive. He didn't expand the empire, he just survived. He fought endless wars against his own brothers, his own generals, and his own bishops. He inherited a united Christian empire and left it a fractured, warring state, fatally weakened for the disasters to come. This is Czar in Truth. Subscribe for more about Byzantine Empire. Kindly comments and share your thoughts. See you in next episode of Julian the Apostate.